Welcome to Building the Future. I'm your host, Kevin Horick. You can check out new episodes of the show every Tuesday and Thursday at 2 p.m. If you missed an episode or want to get more information about the show, please visit buildingthefutureshow.com. SoupX, the Startup Expo, North America's premier startup conference, is March 6th and 7th, 2017, in sunny Fort Lauderdale, Florida. Affordably priced, SoupX is a 2-day international conference featuring workshops, panels, speeches, a $50,000 startup competition, and over 100 exhibitors. For more information, go to sup-x.org. Welcome back to the show. Today we have Hampus Jakobsson. He's an entrepreneur and angel investor. Hampus, welcome back to the show.
Thanks for having me, Kevin.
Yeah, I'm excited to have you back on the show. And you're in Sweden and I'm in Canada, and I love the fact that we can do this across the globe, right? And so maybe before we kind of dive into things, let's kind of give a quick overview of yourself. I think if people want to get a bigger, longer kind of intro of yourself, they can reference the radio show, the previous radio show we did. So maybe do you want to kind of give a quick bio of yourself and kind of your career as well?
Yeah. So actually, one thing that I think it's smart that people start with I was born, but okay. I actually think I will slightly because I think that sure. it's very relevant. It's like I'm the fourth child. I have three older brothers, and they're 8, 9, and 11 years older than I am.
Oh wow.
Yeah, so I kind of grew up I have 5 parents, and I think that I went to kind of 10 years of education of empathy and trying to figure out what drives people, because if you have a younger brother or if you have an older brother, the dynamics is that or a sibling, you want to sit at the table when they're playing role-playing games, you want to be up at late night with them, you want to watch a movie they're watching, and I had this 10-year education of doing that, pretty much every day. So I think that shaped me in so many ways. And it shaped me in the sense that I'm extremely interested in how people work. I really love reading people. I love interviewing people. I love recruiting people. I also am very interested in sales and marketing, because essentially it's a lot of the same dynamics.
Sure.
I'm very interested in user interface design because it's a lot of the same dynamics. What are people seeing? What are people thinking? And when I was planning to university, I was thinking I want to study more of this.
Sure.
Where do you do that? And I was looking into psychology, anthropology, and I found a lot of them being, again, I had 10 years of education of this. With 10 years of education, I looked at universities no, I'm not going to take this. This looks ridiculous. It's how do people work under stress? It's I've seen that, I've seen that a lot of times. It's a group dynamics. I've done it. But then I looked at computer science. I was and simulation, artificial intelligence. I was yeah, that sounds pretty interesting. Maybe, this is feels ridiculous.
Sure.
Looking back now, I mean, my master's in control theory and AI, which is now it's super fashionable. Back then, it wasn't as fashionable, but it was really, I was very interesting. I did it because I'm super interested in people. And during my education, I really wanted to work abroad because I felt that I'm going to be stuck in a Swedish mindset. I'm a Swede, and I really want to have a more international mindset.
Sure.
And I've been traveling a lot with my parents and other siblings, but of course working in another country is very different. So I ended up applying for an internship and doing the things I am best at, which is human engineering. So I said, sadly, I'm at the university in Sweden, and we have to do an internship because otherwise we can't get our exam, which is just totally a lie. And
I love that.
What do you have to do?
And
this French company, which is one of the biggest credit card companies in the world, they were just yeah, sure. Do you know A11 assembler and smart cards? I was yeah, I mean, I'm a computer science student. They're whoa, that's amazing. Do you know crypto? A bit, actually. And they were, super cool. Love to have you. I had no idea what they were talking about. I was in panic studying the weeks before I was going there. And I spent 3 months in France. And the summer after, I went to London and worked there, and with another completely different thing. And then I worked in Munich and in Germany. And I think that what was really nice for me there is I saw these different cultures and learned so much because in France, I was the applied guy.
Right.
In Germany, I was the theoretical guy.
Okay.
And in London, it was more like Sweden. It was more like what I actually am. But one of the things that struck me when I was in London, because I was in London in the heydays of the bubble, it was really going up, really amazing before pre-bubble. And I really felt that this is an amazing time because like I'm a computer science person, but I love creating stuff. And it was amazing because people came to this company I worked at and said, like, we want to build we will build XYZ, and can you build it? And they were like, the company turned around and was like, yeah, if you give us £1 million. And they were like, yeah, sure. And I just felt, wow, you can be so, and it was not after the money. It was like, it was such a creative process of being able to create miracles because we built robots and like installations and everything. So I came back to Sweden and said, like, to one of my best friends, it's like, I'd love to do this. What if we could like build art and get paid to build art? And, one thing led to another, stumbled into a third person. And suddenly there was a person saying, hey, we'd love to use $60,000 to build this huge art installation in 6 months. And we were like, whoa, that's amazing. That's, and knowing now, I would say for art, that is like, immense amount of money.
Totally.
So we started a company, and the only thing when you start a company is to register like a Swedish incorporated. You need like $17,000. Okay. And like we were 2 or 3 guys, like, university, we didn't have $17,000. So we just started talking to some other friends, like, we're doing this thing, we could start a company together. We're not going to work together, but like, if you need a company and we need a company, we can do this. And we like close friends.
Sure.
So what happened is 6 of us just pooled our money and started a company together, like an Inc. And then like we had that, and we started off with like 3 or 5 different projects, like one died day 2, doesn't matter because that was a hobby project. We went up to like 3 projects that was paying money, and then deliver those projects. And then we sat there going like, and we were like, some of us were in the university, some of us started working a bit, and that was really fun. Those 6 months were really amazing.
Sure.
So we just felt we really continue doing this. This is like, this is like almost like an after school thing, and you're hanging out with your friends and doing super fun stuff. Like, why can't life be like this? And then just completely out of the blue, like a friend called us up from one of the biggest phone manufacturers and asked us to help them out. And again, one thing led to another. We stumbled in, and the company ended up being 180 people. And in 8 years later, we were acquired by Blackberry for 150 million. And that year, we were in 13% of all the world's phones, from Motorola, Samsung, and Nokia, and Sony Ericsson. And we designed Android for Google. And it was like, our business plan was learn and have fun. Yeah, and apparently, that was a really great plan. So that was like the first part of my career.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. Mm. No, that's fascinating to me. And like, I know we kind of covered in the radio show kind of more in depth with Blackberry. And I do want to cover a little bit about your time at Google, because that's such a fascinating story to me. And I think, well, I'll let you tell it. Kind of maybe give a quick overview of your time or like how you worked with Google.
Yeah, it was really fascinating. So it was like 2006, we were at Google. I don't actually know how we got that meeting. Like, we were at Google in 2006, and we were kind of touring the valley, because a lot of the San Francisco companies were like, we were at Yahoo, we were at Google, we were at Real Networks, like a lot of different big media companies, and met them. And we were thinking about, a lot of these people were thinking about building phones. So we're kind of just going around meeting them and showing what we could do, and say like, hey, if you want to build mobile phones, we're the go-to people. We have this product. You can use Taiwanese companies and Chinese companies to build phones, and we can create the experience, and you can use the product to do this and that. And we met Google. They had a crazy amount of questions. Nothing really happened. We met Apple. A crazy amount of questions. Nothing really happened. None of them were building phones, but it was obvious that the amount of questions they were asking us was like, something was fishy.
Sure.
And then suddenly, like in 2007, then Google called it an over. It was Andy Rubin, the guy who ran Android, and just called me up from nowhere and just said, like, we'd love you to come here and design Android for us. And like, my answer was like, yeah, we're a tech company, we're a product company, we can license our product. And it was like, no, come on, cut the crap. Like, come here and design Android for me. It was really, I really liked working with Android. It's so funny because like, I was what? And I gave him a couple of recommendations, saying these companies are really great. You should really work with those. Those are like partners of ours. They're really great design companies. And he pretty much hung up the phone. And I was like, okay, like apparently not. Like, we had been called by Russian oligarchs and everything before. So I was like, yeah, sure. You lost one, like whatever. And then he called me the day after, like, hey, my name is Andy Rubin. I was like, yeah, I recognize you, Andy. And he was like, yeah. And he was like, yeah, I'm calling today because I'm going to ask you if you want to like come to Mountain View and help me design Android. And this was like 4 days. And the 4th day, I was like, you're going to realize that we're going to charge you like, $500 an hour. He was just like, we're Google. We print money for our business. That's what we do.
Sure.
Like, just come over on Monday and we'll just start charging me $500 an hour. I was like, okay, interesting. So we came over like three people and spent 2 weeks at Google. And we actually didn't think we were gonna stay. We thought that it was kind of, and I think it also is based on, again, going back to the fact that I'm like the 4th child.
Sure.
Like being the way I grew up was like, if you have three older siblings and they're so much older, you come home with your really great drawing you've done in school and put it on the fridge, and next to it is your brother's, and it's like he's 8 years older. Yours looks like crap.
Sure.
Uh, but then your parents tell you, "Oh, we love you anyhow," and it's really good. And I think that like so, I grew up with like massive founder's imposter syndrome. I really grew up with like, and I didn't know that back then, but now I know that I always grew up like I always believed I have no clue, and for some reason people like believe me, and I'm just waiting for them to figure out that I have no clue.
You know what? That's actually really interesting that you say that, because I feel the exact same way.
Yeah.
Like that's like you couldn't have said it better, right? It's the
I feel
exact
the
same
same way
feeling.
still.
Yeah.
I feel the
Yeah.
same. I mean, I was at yeah. I mean, there's so many ways where it's like I'm at events where it's like soon somebody's going to say, why is that guy here?
That's
And
so
it's like I
funny.
really expect it to
But
happen.
and the crazy thing is like you've been extremely successful in your career, right? At least in a lot of people's eyes, right? Like it's pretty hard to argue that you haven't been successful, right? And so, but that kind of is a good segue into kind of what we want to talk about today. And I know you created a startup and you recently decided to shut down that startup.
Yep.
And, I love people like yourself that are willing and want to talk about kind of why they made the decision to actually, kind of shut her down. And
Yeah.
so, do you maybe want to kind of talk about why you created it, what the startup was, and then kind of why you decided to
Yep.
end it?
Absolutely. So after BlackBerry, so then I worked 2 years at BlackBerry, and then after BlackBerry, so we're at 2012. 2012, I started this company, and it was really like I drew a sketch of like what do I want to learn. And there
Sure.
were like three things I wanted to learn. So I was like wrote them out a note, and I like thinking a lot about them. And then I started talking to my old CTO at like my co-founder, and we bumped into a third guy, and we started talking more about it. And felt like we're going to create this. And like we started out by wanting to like visualize information and make sense of it. We did that for 3 months, and we had like a very rigorous way of testing that it was going to work. And after 3 months, we figured out it's not going to work. We pivoted and became another thing. Did that for 2 months, pivoted and became a third thing. And then after one more half a pivot, we were like, yeah, this is it. And then we had a team of 5 people. Like one guy had left. It was like back and forth. And we like that was like the first 7 months,
Hmm.
I would say, was just like complete like discovery. We had no clue what we were doing. And I think that was a very nice. It was a very nice experience, but also like I think for the guy that joined early, I think he didn't understand that that's what a startup is like.
Ah,
He,
okay.
I think he a lot of times said the reason he left was actually he said that I left because I couldn't stand being at a party and people asked me like he left a really amazing job because he wanted to leave that job, and he'd met us and he joined the startup early on, and he said that the hardest thing was like he met old colleagues and they were like, hey, what are you doing nowadays? And he was like stuttering, trying to explain it, and sounded like a drunk teenager in love, and they were like, what are you doing? And he couldn't really explain it. And he just like, I can handle anything, but I can't handle not being able to say what I do. So like,
Interesting.
I have to leave. And I feel that that's when I'm thriving. Like,
Sure.
because that's when the founder's imposter syndrome is in sync, at least. So it's
Yeah,
like,
yeah,
oh, I don't know
yeah.
what I'm doing. And that's like the way it should
That's
be.
amazing.
Um, but then like we came into this thing, we started building it, we raised one point, like we were in about $1.2 million, started building a team, like ramped up, started getting really nice customers. We had like Evernote, Hootsuite, LinkedIn, Intercom, a lot of big
Huge, huge names.
West Coast tech companies, really, really interesting. But then we came to a point where I think the problem was that, um, so so I think that the problem I think is that there were like we were aiming for a certain product, and I think that there were two kind of products that could have been built. And
Ah, okay.
this was like a predicted what we were building was like a product that gave you recommendations. So it gave users recommendations what you do next. And it was in the business context, so not like a consumer product. But what we found out was that so like there were two things that people wanted. Either a thing, so it was the first thing we started with was for salespeople. And people wanted one of two things. The most simple basic thing that they could pay like whatever, $5 a month for, which essentially like logged emails and synced calendars and stuff, like plumbing. And it was more like, so we don't have to do it because it saves some time, like, an hour here, an hour there, whatever.
Sure.
Or they wanted the other thing, which was like, we don't want salespeople. Can we get a software that just does sales magically, AI, la la la? And the problem is, we were in the middle, which was like, we were like, we were very like what I call it. We were trying to solve an icky problem, like we were
Okay.
trying to solve a people problem. We're like, so you need a process to this. What is your process? And people are like, yeah, we don't really have a good process. We're like, well, maybe you need to get a process first. It's not like our software will magically solve it. It's like if you're a logistics company and you have no clue how to think about how boxes are shipped, you can't buy a software that does that. You have to think through the process first. If you're an HR manager and they're going to do coaching meetings, there's no software that's just going to make you a great coach. You still have to think about how people work.
Sure, totally. Yeah.
So we had these two different clients. We had some clients came in and said can't you just replace our salespeople? And we had some clients said, can you just just log a meeting or whatever? And we really felt stuck in the middle because of course we were not magical, and we were the thing is, if we could have gone and said let's raise $20 million and be magical, but we're Scandinavian, so we were like, hey, it's not going to work. And we're very ambitious, so we didn't want to do something which is well, we can build a 1, 2, 3 million annual recurring revenue kind of company. We're going to build $100 million revenue company. So we kind of get stuck in the middle. And so that was one part of it. The other part of it was we were really in love with the problem really early on. But then suddenly we got into when we were at the 4th year, we were really feeling that we started resenting the whole market. We were really feeling that the problem we were trying to solve, it felt like we were, the analogy is not perfect, but if you start by working with universities or something and university students, and it feels really great, and then suddenly you find out that it's the brats using your product and they're using it to brag, you're like, yeah, this is not what I started the company for. I started this company to empower people, and now suddenly we have brats bragging with it. And it's that was our customers were nice, everything was great, but we kind of lost the love for it. It felt yeah. And I think that those two things started colliding more and more when we felt the internal emotional thing of getting up in the morning and being super passionate. And the other part of it was how much we needed to be ambitious or even lie to actually be ambitious enough. And that dissonance really started to eat on us. Okay. And I think that one of the best litmus tests we found for it was that we just stopped fighting. So it really felt more and more every month that passed, we were oh, these guys are buying, but they want that kind of integration. And people were like, yeah, no problem. Or oh, that feature is going to be delayed 2 weeks. And we're like, okay, that's okay. I mean, it's it's life's hard. It's better do it right. And I think that when I started feeling that, first I was relieved. It's great. In the evenings you can you can do other stuff. You don't have to have all these conversations with your co-founders and fight with them, and you don't have to stay up till 1 to write the last email. And it's hey, I wrote the last email. When they wake up in the morning, they're like, ah, shit, he stayed up late and wrote an email. You don't have to do all those stupid things. But what happened also is you go to work and sort of hang out with your colleagues and have a good time, and you really sort of feeling have we lost passion? Have we lost ambition for this? And when I realized that, then I really felt we shouldn't be doing this, because I think that the most precious thing, when you're starting a company, is I really believe that we're in a time right now, and in this world we're living in, you can do anything you want in life. Sure. You can really if you want to be a math professor, you could you could. It's it's going to take a couple of years. It's good. If you want to, it's yes, maybe it's hard to get a Nobel Prize, but you can start working on it. Sure. If you want to run a podcast, go ahead. Yep. If you want an interior designer, go ahead. It's and if that is an extremely privileged world, and I think that what I really believe in is that you should play as if you only have one life left. It's when you're playing a computer game, it's this is the last life. It's don't mess around with this. When you have that last life, you start thinking through what you're doing. You're not becoming risk averse necessarily, because then you can never win the game. But you start to think through your strategies. And I think that we came into that point just going, why are we doing this? We're wasting the most precious asset we have, which is our life.
Sure.
And so I was really starting to doubt the whole thing. Okay, and we had plenty of money in the bank. We had investors that really liked us. We had plenty of new investors that talked to us constantly. But I was really feeling if we raise another round, we kind of have to, tell all these investors, yeah, we're going to make it. And we have to be so positive about this for another 2 years to give it a true chance.
Sure.
But I had even a problem of being positive in a 2-month perspective.
Oh, wow.
And I'm a very, very positive person. So I had no problem at all being positive in a meeting, but I was thinking through it. I felt we were stopped caring really, really.
Got you.
So I just started I had a meeting with my co-founders, and they were yeah, I've really felt the same. And then we brought in all the employees and just said like, if we would do this, like if we would just, pull the brakes, what would you think? And the only thing that came out that people were really panicking about, there were two things. There was like, one, all the customers that are using it right now, we can't just let them go. It's like they're going to be horrified.
Sure.
Two, this team. Like, we're a really nice group of people. Like, we can't just, we're going to work together.
Sure.
So then we said, okay, so let's just talk to I'll talk to the board, talk to the owners, like the investors, and just say, this is the time to go to do like some kind of exit. Like, let's go sell what we built, because it's amazing what we built. People are really impressed. We have good customers. And then, I used to run M&A, so like, it's very easy to get in contact with people.
Sure.
I talked to like the who's who, like 15 most, like, kind of the obvious acquirers for the things that we do. And a lot of all the way from like, the Airbnbs to whatever, to the Salesforce.
Sure.
And like, there were two companies that were like, yeah, let's go and acquire you. And the other ones were like, bad fit, you're like, we got to move, or like bad timing or whatever. And one of them was acquired by a very, very, very big other company. They were like, yeah, we're interested, but can you just wait 4 more weeks? And then they were acquired by a behemoth, and like, that's why I wanted to wait.
Okay.
But then, so we had like one horse left that was like, we really want to do this, and started the acquisition process. And they booked, like, we did everything, and like booked the tickets to meet the founder for the final meeting, for the onboarding. They had not, we had given the price, everything in terms. We have nothing signed. It was like still discussion. We're gonna have the like meeting with the founder and talk to their founder. And they called us up like on the Friday their morning, and we're like, when are you arriving? Because like, we're booking the meeting. He's gonna come in. If you're like half an hour late, it's not gonna be a meeting. And we're like, yeah, come on, we've got the tickets. We're gonna be 1 hour in advance. No problem. Cool, great. And then they called us their evening, or their afternoon, my evening, and called and just said, I'm sorry, like, we're this is not going to happen. I'm sorry. Like, we're at a strategy meeting. It's like, I didn't know of the strategy meeting, but we're not going to acquire it. And we understood that. We were like, in one way, we were, of course, like, really unsatisfied. It
Sure.
felt really bad. But another way, it felt really great, because it felt like we'd really, given it a shot. Like, we talked to 15 companies, we found two good candidates, had good discussions with them. And at the same time, I think the team, they had kind of like, okay, we're going to give this 3 weeks. I'm not going to think about my life and my future now for 3 weeks. I'm just try to work, like change, go in and update my LinkedIn profile and whatever.
Yeah.
But I'm not going to think about, like, I'm going to have expectations. And when these guys pulled out, it was like, okay, it's over. So what do we do? So what we then did is that we booked a whole week with the team. And like, first of all, like, we had a quick pre-meeting and just said, like, it's over. Like, let you go and find a job. Like, everybody will help everybody. We'll write it like a spreadsheet where everybody want to go, and everybody will just help out with contacts and everything.
Right.
So it was like, me and the VP engineering, we're going to stay, and we're going to, like, package this thing and see if somebody wants the assets or whatever, just dismantle it. And yeah, cool. And then, okay, so then we had a meeting Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday. Like, Monday, we were just like, what did you learn during these years? Like, just talk about what you learned.
Sure.
And like, everybody just had like a really long like journal experience. They talked about what they learned. People like filled in. Like, we had a lot of discussions and talked a lot about like, why we failed, and document that really well, and like felt like we like packaged all of these things. The second day, we had, so that was a great day. Everybody felt like, yeah, that's good, and we did that. Oh, why did you do that? Oh, I remember. Like, we shouldn't have that test environment. That's a great thing to think about. The next thing we're building, whatever. Tuesday, second day, like, everybody had prepared, like, what are your strengths and what are your weaknesses for everyone else in the team. So we just sat down, and the conversation was like, John, like, I that we've had all difficulties and everything, but like, for your next job, you got to remember that you have this thing when you do this, which is an amazing thing when you do it. But the problem is that it makes me feel really uncertain, because I feel that I have to be responsible for blah, blah, blah. And when I become uncertain, then I start to be nagging you, and then like, you get pissed off. And that's another thing. Number two, another bad thing you're doing is blah, blah, blah. But the good things you're doing, and blah, blah, blah. And the amazing thing is, like, everybody gave each other feedbacks on strengths and weaknesses.
That's amazing, actually.
It was really amazing. Like, 8 group of people, like, constantly hugging and crying for a whole day. And really, really great. And people like filling in. It's like, oh, like, I feel exactly the same. Like, I don't want the attention. I just want to say I feel exactly the same. It's like, oh, that's really good. And all the focus was like building you for your next job.
Interesting.
And, and then like third day, we did like a quick exercise, which is like, what am I grateful for? And then
Sure.
like, what am I going to do now? Like, what's my future, personal future? So everybody just did like very short. This is what I'm grateful for that happened. And then like, what happens to me next is I'm going to do this right now. And like one went to Apple, one went to Y Combinator company, one went to a Sequoia founded company. Um, who else? Where the other guys? One went to super well financed company, moved away. One went to super cool other startup. One guy founded his own startup. So it's like everybody just dispersed super quickly.
Sure.
Uh, and then me and my one of my co-founders, the VP engineering, we packaged the product, and we're like, the plan was kind of like to keep it alive to a certain date, and then just like we emailed all the users, and we're just going to package it, terminate it, and then hand out the money to investors. But then in the midst of nowhere, like customers started contacting us and saying, "Hey, I could leave my job. Like, I'd leave my job and start a company and just buy our product." And we had like 5 different people did that, and
Wow.
most of them, yeah, but some of them were like, "I'll give you $1." I
Oh,
was like,
okay.
"Yeah, I don't think so." But then like one of them was truly like, "Yeah, well, we want to buy it." So it ended up being a company buying the software, and we're like delivered to them, and it's not publicly released yet. But
Sure.
it was a really interesting experience too, actually going through the whole process of actually handing it over. And the only reason we handed it over, which is really interesting, was really because it felt like we had a lot of stuff, we built a lot of value, and it felt that was sad that just went, that we threw it out. Financially, if we kind of turned off the lights earlier, maybe made more sense, all the legal fees of the transaction. But I think at the end of the day, like we were super happy. We created a great relationship with another company, had a lot of good time with them. They flew here to Sweden, did integration, hung out with them a lot, got to learn them, like, get to know those guys. That was fun. And that's where we ended.
That yeah, that's interesting. That's actually quite an amazing story, right? Like you obviously probably didn't think that you would end up selling to a customer.
No.
So is it back up online now as the same brand or a different brand, or you can't
Different
say it
brand.
yet? Okay.
Different brand.
Okay.
They've integrated and they're actually selling it.
Okay.
And they've like reskinned the product and everything else. They had a product which, like, not really similar, but like in the bigger scheme of things, it was similar.
Oh, okay.
So for them, it was a great boost. And one of the other very fascinating things that happened is like I've really consistently throughout the whole process like blogged about this, like
Yeah.
very very detailed, like why did we fail, very detailed, like how do we go through this process of like terminating the company and like talking to each other and all of these things. And what happened when I posted the first blog post was one of those, like the web like landing page change was like it's over, and like quick description, read more here. And then
Sure.
people went to the blog and we really explained like this is what we've done over the years. These are the pivots and everything, and this is like why it doesn't work. Second blog post was like fundamentals, like much looking into like technology and everything and like how it was built and what we did wrong process wise. That post, the 5 biggest kind of co-opetition players, like people were like, are they competition or are they whatever? What are they? They contacted me and like wanted to talk.
Really?
Yeah, and the fascinating thing is like some of them had, looking at their team page was like, if I can have this team, I can do anything.
Ah,
And
interesting.
yeah, the most scary one was like, well, some of them called me up and were like, "Hey, we'd like to acquire you, whatever." But like 4 out of 5, they really like, especially this one with the amazing team page. They called me up and I was like, "We want to learn everything about like what happened. If you can share." Of course, like I'm happy to share. Like I've done the same call to other people that folded or got acquired.
Sure.
Um, so like we had this web conf when I was like, I called in 3 founders at a round table. I was like, "Hey, you guys, you're the stars." So I was like, your team is amazing. And we're like, "Stop praising me, man." And we're like, "Yeah, sorry. Like I just wanted like kudos, guys. You've been amazing at recruitment." The call started with it, like one of the founders almost broke down,
Really?
and one of the other founders, yeah, they were like, "We have
Wow.
no clue what we're doing," and like we felt you guys knew what you were doing.
Interesting.
And I was like, "Hey, on your webpage, it looks like you're killing it." And they just said like, "Yeah, but how are you going to write your webpage honestly? Like, should you write on a webpage? We don't really want what we're doing, but we're really trying hard. Nobody will invest. Nobody will work for you.
It's good
No customer
advice.
will sign agreement." Exactly. So I was like, but it looks. I mean, you can't go around singing like Lego hymn and going like, everything is awesome, and then just one day going like, it's over. And then like they were really saying, yeah, this is life, and that's how horrible it is, and we're being so dishonest with each other. And like that's why when somebody finally say they're folding, then everybody just runs to them, like you think like vultures, but actually like more like just trying to learn, like no, 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 you don't die, come on, we're also gonna die. Which was also like was a really weird experience, really understanding the world we're building, whereas like everybody's like wearing this like, very non-empathic, very like non-vulnerable way of like saying that they're best, and they're so clueless for multiple reasons, imposter syndrome, but also like, just like, putting up an image.
Sure. No, that's amazing. So I'm curious though, why did you decide to post and put this stuff online? Because I think a lot of people wouldn't do that.
Yeah, for me, it was more like I think that I like I have like the only metric that I like if I look at like year after year or whatever, it's like if I look at what the metric I live life by,
Okay.
it's like, I think like, I guess everybody doesn't maybe have a metric. Maybe it's just I'm like, I maybe I'm a weirdo, but I really have a metric, and my metric is like learning.
Sure.
And like I want to look back and think about stuff I did which I didn't understand what I was doing, and now I understand it. And so for me, like writing about it was a really great way of like really trying to kind of tell the story so that I actually learned. And there's this technique called the Feynman technique, which Richard Feynman did, which is like if you're going to tell me how quantum physics works, I'm going to sit there and listen to you and like, whoa, I get it, and then I'm going to turn around and tell it to somebody. I can actually tell it to somebody without actually getting it, because like I can retell some of the stories and everything. Like I might get it.
I got you.
But if you tell it to me and I have to write a post about it, like or an article about it or a page about it, so that a third party can read it, like I have to really get it, because in
Sure.
text there's no vagueness. It's
Yeah,
like if it
fair.
says like,
Interesting.
and then kind of like the beard disappears. If people are like what? But if I say it when I'm talking about it and like dancing when I'm doing it, people are like, yeah, I get it too, but they don't really get it.
Gotcha.
So by writing it down was a great process for me to actually processing the information. And that's like why, like that's honestly why I run my blog. Like my blog is really like this. Like I'm an angel investor. I invest in a lot of companies. I meet a lot of founders. And like, I have a meeting with somebody. They're saying, how should we run our retail strategy? Like, oh, yeah, we should probably do this. And I call another company. How do you run a retail strategy? I'm like, well, we use Amazon and for this, but then we look retail centers and ads. Like, okay, but how do you, oh, interesting. And like talk more and more about them. And then suddenly after talking to four of them, I was like, hey, maybe I should just write a article about this. And when I start writing it, I realize I'm completely clueless. I'm like, okay, I have to do this for real now. And then when I actually I have published the article, it's actually then I feel like I know this now. And
Interesting.
if I was even better at writing it, I think that people would get it to the same extent that I'm getting when I'm writing it. But at least feel that it's amazing. So I focus a lot on writing on actually the soft subjects,
Okay.
like not actually like, okay, so the process of how do you run a logistics center? Because I think that's so dated. Because like, yeah, that's amazing now, but in 3 years it's gonna be different. So what I write a lot about is like the process of doing X. Like the process of folding a company, like the why a company doesn't reach product market fit, or like how it feels not reaching product market fit. What's the process of trying to reach product market fit? Because those things I think are like eternal subjects. Those are like it's always going to be a problem because it's how you handle uncertainty.
Sure. Yeah, that's actually really interesting. Do you ever think you'll put out a book or write a book?
I don't think so I don't think so because I think that I don't think I'm good at it. But again, I've got imposter syndrome. But I think the problem is that I think that I'm not sure that I could keep a subject. Like a founder told me 3 weeks ago, said, I think your blog post, like we had he flew to Sweden. We had a lot of fun in my meetings, and he said, I actually want to fly to Sweden and sit down with you, like with my co-founder, and talk to you because I think you know what we're going through. And I was like, yeah, maybe. And we spent the day, and they were like, both of them, like, this is the best thing that ever happened to us. Thank you very much. And I was like, I didn't say anything. Like, you just, said kind of normal stuff. And then he looked at my blog and he said, the problem with your blog is that it's, you're writing like link-baity titles and you're writing really short. It's like you should read long reads. You should really be serious when you're writing this because you're like really like, it feels like you're writing really short and really like to the point, yes, but sometimes you should like dwell deeper in the subject. So he said that 2 weeks ago. And I was like, okay. So I wrote one of my first like long reads without jokes or anything, like just really serious on the subject. And that for me was a big challenge. And that's like a 5-minute read.
Okay.
So like writing a book, I think that if I wrote a book, I would write like, a bunch of novels. It was like, it's going to be a lot of different small blog posts. So I think that I'd love the challenge one day to actually be good enough at doing like research, disposition, planning, and execution to actually write a book about one subject.
Okay,
Like I
interesting.
mean, I'd really be impressed by myself if I ever did that.
That's interesting. So I'm curious then, like that the new blog post that's a 5 minute read. How did it compare to the previous blog posts that are a little bit shorter and maybe with some jokes in it? Like from the users that have been reading your blog, did you get any feedback? Kind of, this is good, better, worse, the same? Doesn't really matter.
I think that what I'm seeing, which is so interesting, is that I think that I see when I write those posts, because I did one before which was kind of like that, and I
Okay.
think what I see is that it feels like people are. So one of the things is like I don't ever so like three metrics.
Okay.
Uh, how many people read the post or like came to the post or whatever, like just traffic, unique visitors. One is like how many people liked it, and then how many people like talk about it,
Sure.
not on necessarily the blog but other places. So I would say like what the thing I found out is how many people visit the blog, unique visitors, has nothing to do with the quality of the post whatsoever. It's only if it's picked up by something. Like, if it stays on Hacker News first page for like 2 hours, it gets like 20,000 views.
Sure.
If it's picked up by some blog, some newsletter, it gets 2,000. Whatever. It's like I can just write like dog poo in a bag and like get it. If I get it on Hacker News for half an hour, it's going to get the same kind of users as like how to actually get traction with your product. Nobody cares.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
And then I would say the second one is like how many likes. I would say the amount of likes I for every post is almost the same. It's really weird.
Interesting.
And I
Interesting.
would say I think the reason for that is I think that why my hypothesis is I never ever write in my post, can you please, click like, come on, dudes, click like.
Got you.
And I think what happens is I think honestly what I think has happened, I think it's almost kind of always the same people that click like. It's the people that are like, yeah, this is good, like. And I can see a small difference in the ones that are like very controversial subjects. Like if I
Okay.
write something very controversial, it gets like 20% higher.
Really
But but it's like very little difference.
interesting.
Um, but then with that last part, which is like how much is it like talked about,
Yeah.
and that's the ones where I see the long reads are just outperforming it completely.
Really.
So like if I write
Huh.
something which is like in depth, long read, very serious, then like posting it to Facebook, there's like a massive chat. One of them got on Hacker News, and I wrote about like how being cash flow positive can be really bad for you, and because I thought about it a lot. And that had like a really long thread on Hacker News where a lot of people talked about it. And some people were like, yeah, he's obviously an investor. Of course, he wants people to like take massive risk. And other people were like, this is exactly what happened to me. Like when this happens, I was like, you're in panic for a long time. And I think the post is really, talking about it in a great way. And that was like very interesting for me feeling that because that's the engagement I'm after.
Yeah, totally.
The sad part is
Interesting.
only that's the least measurable. So like, if you just look at the stats page, I would love that all those people just clicked like so I could feel, oh, it was a good post.
Interesting. That's actually quite fascinating to me because a lot of people would say keep your blog posts like really short and you found kind of the opposite is more successful. And I think it's a lot of trial and error, I think, and you need to figure out what works for you and push yourself out of your comfort zone.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, again, I'm doing it only for one reason. I'm doing it to learn. So for
Sure.
me, like what I like about it is that there are two degrees of learning. I mean, learn about the subject and learn about the medium. So the
Sure.
nice thing is like, if I learn about the subject, the longer I have to write, the more I have to learn about it. But I think that it has like uh it doesn't have like a linear return. Like, after a while, you don't learn that much more about it. So like I feel like I kind of get it, but maybe more, but I can always do more research. Um, but then the other part is, of course, the medium.
Sure.
Like if somebody says, "Can't you write long reads?" I'm like, "Yeah, maybe I could." It's like it's gonna be hard. And like another guy said, like, "Why didn't you do this post, but just like a tweet storm out of it?" I didn't do that because I don't like doing like micro posts of stuff. But I was like, that would be a super interesting challenge for me because like I would be uncomfortable doing it.
Interesting.
So for me, I'm really trying to find places where it's like, and that's I think that thanks to the fact that I really believe that I'm pretty shit at everything. The good part of that is like when am pretty shit at something, I'm actually really, I'm good in that mode. I'm a pretty,
Interesting.
I find myself sometimes like being an angel investor is I more have a problem with it with Like I more had trouble like going to an event, speaking on stage, being like an angel investor, going down, and then people coming up to me like, Mister, can I talk to you? And I'm like, I'm really uncomfortable doing this. Like I don't know shit what I'm talking about, you know? And they're like, can I get 2 minutes with you? And it's like, yeah, you could, but like I don't know what I'm talking about. Like I'm not going to show what I'm going to tell you. I'm much more comfortable when it's like, you know, I talked to for the Norwegian government like, a couple of years ago. They were like, can you explain the freemium economy to us? I was like, me? And I was like, sure. And then, like, you know, I went to Norway, to Oslo, and explained the freemium economy for the government. Like, I learned so much. It was really great.
That's amazing.
It was really fun.
That's fascinating to me. It's interesting though that you still feel that way, right? Because you've obviously been successful. You've made a ton of money. You've worked for big brands. You've done the startup space. You're investing, and that you still feel like that is really fascinating to me. And I think that's actually almost like really good advice for people, because I think no matter where you are in your career, everybody has their insecurities, right, about something.
Absolutely, and I think that we should be using those insecurities. I think that one of my favorite authors is Brené Brown, her books on vulnerability, because I think that the problem we're doing a lot of times is we're not really saying, I think that I kind of subscribe to the old like Jane Fonda like fake it till you make it belief. But I think the problem is like when we're doing that, we're doing the Lego song. Like we're just like I really love when people can say, like, I don't really know this. Like one of the things that happened at TAT, like back at the company, we were like, you know, we kind of in a way like ran the world of mobile user interface. It was just completely crazy. We were like, and I still can't really get that. Yeah, I talked actually in the French embassy about the future user interfaces. I was standing, or like no, in the French, whatever, like in Paris. I was like, why are you asking me? It was really
That's
crazy.
amazing,
I was
though.
a French interpreter constantly, and I was like, really confusing. But no, what I was going to say was really that I think was so fascinating was really the fact that I think like the whole founder's imposter syndrome. I think that you should really be like using it, because like the way we did a lot of things at TAT is like we came to a meeting and like we always like downplayed what we did. Like I especially remember like when we started working with Motorola and we came in and like the first guy was like, hey, finally the experts are here, and you know, very American and like in a nice way in a sense, but we were like, hey, we don't like, you know, come on. And we sat down and the first thing we were saying like, yeah, we didn't put a lot of time in this, but like I really want to show you what we kind of started investigating in. And the thing is, we'd spent like 4 weeks of planning it. Okay. But you know, we really felt like if we're downplaying it, you know, they're going to be excited. But if we're saying like we know what we're talking about, they're going to like, yeah, we hoped it would be more. And every time we needed to like really impress people, we always said, you know, I'm Swedish and it's really hard for me to say something is good. I think this is pretty okay. But you know, I'm Swedish. And when people looked there, it was like, oh, you're Swedish. Like, this is the best thing I've ever seen. And they had to be bragging about it. And that also became like almost like, you know, a social engineering trick for us a lot of times, downplaying us, using that we're Swedish, and then having the other party to kind of tell us like, no, come on, you don't know that. You're the best thing ever. Instead of us coming in and saying we're the best ever and them going, yeah, there are other people that are really impressive, man. Like, calm down a bit.
Sure.
And it was such a trick, and it worked really nicely with also feeling that a lot of times. Like, one of our counterparties, when we came to Blackberry, the guy that interviewed us, like when we just came, was the guy that designed OS X for Apple, with Steve Jobs.
That's
like,
amazing,
he met us,
right?
He was like, hey, like blah blah blah, I'm Don Lindsay. So we were like, Don Lindsay. We're like, where do I recognize the name? It's like, oh, you run design here? It's like, yeah, what did you previously? So I designed Vista for Microsoft, but then previously I designed OS X with Steve Jobs. And we're like,
oh.
Okay.
Yeah, like what do you say to that, right?
Yeah, it's like, you did a good job. Completely humble. And he was like, I really like what you do. And we were like,
yeah, you're like, sign my Mac.
Actually, the crazy thing is like when we got credits, then he moved to Sweden. Like he moved to Malmo and lived here because like he wanted to be close to the team. And it was just one of those things like, what? You know that we're not that good. And he was like, stop being so Swedish.
That's so funny.
He's actually Canadian though, so he has got some humbleness in him.
Yeah, that's amazing. Well, Hampus, we're kind of coming to the end of this, so I think maybe let's close the end of the show with mentioning where people can get more information about yourself and the blog post that you mentioned earlier. Yeah, so
if people want to find like anything I do, it's at hajak.se, and then on Twitter I'm hajak on SC too, on Twitter too, not .se, so hajak on Twitter. And yeah, I mean, I'm pretty easy to find too. Like if somebody pings me on Twitter, I usually reply. And if somebody has an interesting problem to talk about, I'm super happy to talk about it.
Well, Hampus, again, I really appreciate you taking the time out of your night to be on the show. I know it's like evening for you, but I really appreciate you doing this again.
No problem at all. All the kids are in bed. Nobody's disturbing me. It's great.
All right, man. Well, I'll let you go, but you have a good rest of your night, and we'll talk soon. Okay.
Talk soon, Timmy.
Bye.
Thanks. Bye.
Thanks for listening. The music for the show is done by Electric Mantra. You can check them out at electricmantra.com and keep building the future.